That's what they did in building these shelters around the country, these Superfund cleanup sites. They were cover stories to conceal spending hundreds of millions of dollars on deep underground military bases, while the public thought they were cleaning up nuclear waste at Superfund cleanup sites.
John, have you ever had the privilege to step inside of one of those?
I have not. I've been on the roof of them, but I haven't been in the door, no.
I can say that I've been, when I was 20 years old, fresh in the Army, that I have set foot in one somewhere in northern Maryland, and that's as much as I'll say, but one little tiny shack on top of a giant green field, and it had 30 floors that it could take you underground.
No kidding.
And it was impressive. That was the fastest elevator I've ever been on, I'll tell you that for sure.
Well, I have the money to build fast ones, but here's the deal, gentlemen. Almost nobody understands the engineering and technology of cleaning up nuclear waste. Almost nobody understands how long it takes to do it, and drum roll, please, how much money it costs. The attitude of Congress is, I want this stuff out of my district. I don't care how long it takes, how much it costs. Get in there, have your Superfund cleanup, and get it done. There was one of these built outside my hometown of St. Louis, Missouri. I spent 2 decades plus investigating this thing, doing FOIA requests, Freedom of Information Act requests, taking photographs on the ground, aerial photographs, interviewing outside vendors, interviewing Department of Energy employees, and I was able to put together a pretty complete picture of what they've got going there, which is basically a very large command and control center, disguised as a Superfund cleanup site. These were done all over the country, by the way.
I have the privilege of working at a Superfund site, believe it or not.
Well, very few people who worked there knew what they were doing.
Right.
In reality. My friend Ann Morrison, I was telling you about, she worked at one of these. And she was an engineer, and she wore a colored badge that allowed her in some areas of the administration area and denied her access to other parts of the administrative area. Now, why would you deny people, your own employees, access to certain administrative areas in a no-big-deal cleanup site? Why would you do that? It makes no sense whatsoever. But they did, and they did it under threat of losing your job.
John, you reminded me of a story. I hadn't thought about it in years. One of my mentors in government years ago transferred and had a very high-ranking job at the Department of Energy, and he was in charge of, among other things, atomic waste, radioactive waste in South Carolina, I believe it was.
Right.
And he described acres and acres of containers with radioactive material in it that were leaking. They were leaking. And his answer was, after due thought, he retired. And that was the answer. There was no answer, and they're probably still leaking all over the country.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
it's sobering. The people don't know these things are happening. Every day that we live through, we should give thanks that we've been given one more day. That's how close we are.
I agree. Absolutely, Griff. Time is short. You're getting involved in these conversations. People always want to have a date. I don't have a date.
No, there is no date. You can't put a date on it.
But Professor McCanny says, what are you going to do if I give you a date? Buy another case of tuna fish? You know, preparedness is a lifestyle. It's not something you do when you have a date. It's a lifestyle. It's a way of living. And once you figure this out, you either adopt the lifestyle or you don't.
Mm-hmm.
And that's so true.
John, I wanted to, before we run out of time, I wanted to clarify one thing in my mind. Did I hear you right? I may have made this up in my mind. You said that the Mississippi would expand and be deep, and the Great Lake configuration would change.
Right.
Did you imply that the Great Lakes would empty into the Mississippi?
That's going to be part of it. Probably Lake Michigan is going to empty into the Mississippi River Valley. But at the same time, it's not going to drain out the Lake Michigan. It's just going to be part of an overall scenario. And one of the things every Navy veteran told me is that at every classified briefing, they were all told that Wisconsin would be mostly wiped out and underwater for the most part.
Well, now, the Great Lakes are typically 600 feet above sea level, and Louisiana at the other end of the Mississippi is at sea level. do you see a scenario of dumping water 600 feet down the Mississippi into sea level?
Unfortunately, yes. Of course, sea level is going to be higher than it is now.
Then Louisiana would disappear.
Most of the Navy map that these men showed, that these men have seen, we got enough time I can do this, starting at Maine and going down the Atlantic side. Starting at Maine at the Canadian border, they take damage up to 400 feet above sea level, which typically on the East Coast is going to be 50 to 100 miles inland, depending on how quick it gets high. Going farther south, there's something called the Blue Ridge Parkway. The Navy says the East Coast will take damage up to the Blue Ridge Parkway, which is about 100 miles inland during most of its run down the east side of the Appalachian Mountains. Now, that area alone has maybe 60 or 70 million people living in it. Between
what
Canadian,
about Louisiana?
Well, let's go down to Florida. Florida's going to be mostly gone. Maybe some of the Florida on the mainland, but as far as the isthmus going out into the Gulf of Mexico and the Atlantic Ocean, Florida's going to be mostly underwater. Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana are going to lose about half their real estate at least. Louisiana maybe slightly more because it's so close to sea level to begin with. Texas will take damage typically about 80 to 100 miles inland. And like I said, I was in Texas just 2 months ago, and my client was a preparedness consultation. I get to his home he's building. Before I even get out, I said, look down. There's no dirt. It's all sand. I said to him and his wife, this used to be under the ocean, didn't it? He said, yeah, John, it used to be. We were 100 miles from the ocean.
Well, if the Mississippi expands, that means that Memphis disappears and St. Louis, all of the coastal towns will be underwater along the Mississippi.
At that point, in St. Louis, which is my hometown, the St. Louis is on the high ground, and southern Illinois is the low ground. During most of that part of the Mississippi River basin there, Missouri has the high side. Once you get north of the boot heel of Missouri, Missouri has the high ground, and southern Illinois is all low ground. So Illinois will flood out, and most of Missouri will be okay, except for the boot heel.
John, I think somebody wants you to quit talking, man.
No, actually, Andrew, you know what? It's been happening on and off. It's actually been pretty clear as far as the sound's concerned. I know that John was having some pretty nasty issues with his sound as well. But
coming across everybody right now.
But folks, one thing to understand is to prepare yourself mentally, physically, and spiritually for these times ahead. Changing your lifestyle now will make it very easy. Well, not very easy, but it'll make it easier for you to be able to make the transition over to a lifestyle where, say, the creature comforts are no more, and that's going to be that's going to be the big thing. Is, are you simplifying your life now so that when things do happen, and say there is a breakdown of society, and say resources are at a premium and or not even existent, are you able to adapt and overcome? That's what
I have a quick follow-up to that, gentlemen. 3 years ago, I was in the Philippines, and I did a presentation at the home of the former president of the Bank of the Philippines, a presentation on my paper, No Need for Panic. Mm-hmm. These are people who grow up and reach their 18th birthday never having set foot in their own kitchen. These are people who never, ever drive an automobile. You simply don't do that. A gated community, about 2,000 feet above sea level, very nice people. The servants waiting on them 24/7. And during the question and answer part, they said, John, who's going to survive this? I pointed to the next island over, covered in lush tropical jungle, and I said, I'll tell you who's going to survive this. Those barefoot peasants on that next island that own a couple of cast iron pots, machetes, and not much else. That's who's going to survive this. They got real quiet. Because they knew once their money wasn't worth anything, once electricity stops, that their lifestyle's finished, probably forever. In the meantime, the lifestyle of the barefoot peasants isn't going to change all that much.
Right.
John, were you at Baguio?
I was at a far Manila suburb, and I don't know the name of it. It was a gated community that had guys with submachine guns at the gate, and 40 acres of Swiss chalets, 40 acres of haciendas, and 40 acres of American type ranch-style homes. Probably 10 or 12 restaurants, 3 golf courses. Very nice.
Mm-hmm. John, I have to ask you a question real quick before we get finished up. I know I've heard you on the NutriMedical report before, but do you agree with Bill Deagle that we're going to start to see the ocean tides rising and then waning back out to sea on a much more extreme level as it starts to get close?
What the Navy says is that we'll have about a 30-day period of time when these events get to that level where it's noticeable before it really kicks in and starts wiping out the planet. And not much longer than that. That's what the Navy told these men.
Well, everybody likes to have that little bit of hope that they'll see it coming, I suppose, including myself.
Yeah, and that's human nature to want to have a heads up on something, so you can live a normal life up till the very last moment. I know, I do the same thing. I just bought a new motorcycle.
John, I have one more question before we run out of time. Have you heard anything from military Navy regarding the chemtrail aerosol spraying?
I have not, and it's not for lack of asking, but that's compartmentalized also.
Yeah. Have you heard me talk on that?
No, sir, but I've read a lot about it, and if you've written some papers, I may have read those because I read a lot.
It's out of Wright-Patterson. It's a Navy program, and it's for the RFMP, Radio Frequency Mission Planner, the VTRPE subprogram, and the Navy program. It's a Navy project.
Okay. Well, the Navy's always been the lead service when it comes to technology and science. They have been since before World War II.
Now they're using it for weather control.
Folks, we're about out of time. So what I'd like to do is, first of all, thank John Moore. John Moore, thank you for coming on tonight.
It was good. It was fun, gentlemen.
Fabulous conversation that we've had. Yeah, and lots of good information, folks, to really consider and digest. Our next broadcast is Sunday evening. Sunday evening we have Dr. Tom Wicks coming on. Dr. Tom Wicks developed Stabil, which is the preservative for gasoline. And
no kidding.
Yeah, and we're going to be talking about ways to and try to get out of them how to make your own fuel. If it's possible, what are some of the ways to do that in order to keep internal combustion engines going if you have to do that yourself, as well as some of the nuances with Stabil. But it should be an interesting conversation with Dr. Wicks for sure. He's a brilliant man, and I hope to get a lot of information out of him.
He has 3 PhD degrees.
Yeah, he's really sick smart. And and then following next Thursday, we have Dr. John Waterman from the Waterman Files of Argus Sug Radio in Holland. He'll be on, a man of great integrity, and I really look forward to hearing from him as well. Again, John Moore's website is thelibertyman.com. They can order the DVD off your website, John?
That's right, or by calling 800-592-9543.
And folks, I highly recommend that you get this and watch it. A lot of good information and definitely a good resource to be able to pass along to individuals and hopefully they can see the light. But with that said, folks, we're out of time. So thanks, Griff. Thanks, Andrew, for stopping by. I really do appreciate it. Again, Sunday night, 8 o'clock Eastern. We'll be back live. Until then, this is Joe Joseph. This is Freedomlink Radio. Have a pleasant evening.